It wasn't just another science fiction movie. It wasn't sleek like Star Wars or hopeful like Close Encounters. This was darker, meaner, a story about isolation, violation, and survival inside a steel coffin drifting through space. Alien wasn't made to comfort you. It was made to crawl under your skin, to turn silence into dread and shadows into predators. Behind the terror of that perfect organism was chaos. Designs so disturbing the studio nearly banned them, blood rigs that shocked the cast, and a vision so relentless it pushed everyone to their limits. What began as a simple monster movie became a nightmare etched into cinema history. These are 20 weird facts about Alien. Number 1. It's hard to imagine now, but Alien almost wasn't called Alien. The original title of Dan O'Bannon's script was Star Beast, a name that sounds more like a Saturday morning cartoon than one of the greatest horror films ever made. O'Bannon admitted later he hated the title, but couldn't think of a better one. Then, while revising, he noticed how often the word alien appeared in the script, not just as a noun, but as an adjective. Alien world, alien ship, alien life form. The simplicity struck him. Just one word. Clean and ominous. Alien. Ridley Scott loved it. The studio loved it, and the rest is history. The title itself became part of the film's power. Minimal, mysterious, unforgettable. Because sometimes the scariest thing doesn't need explanation. It just needs a name. Number 2. Alien's writer, Dan O'Bannon, didn't just invent the chestburster, he felt it. While studying film in Europe, O'Bannon developed Crohn's disease, a chronic condition that caused him excruciating abdominal pain and uncontrollable spasms. The feeling of something writhing inside his stomach became the seed of Alien's most terrifying idea. O'Bannon once joked, "I didn't invent Alien, my gut did." He funneled his suffering into science fiction, imagining parasites, invasive creatures, and violent births. The alien wasn't just a monster, it was his disease made flesh, the embodiment of a body turning against itself. In a way, Alien is less about outer space and more about inner space, about the fear of your own body betraying you. Audiences thought they were watching an alien attack, but at its core, they were watching O'Bannon's pain turned into cinematic mythology. Number 3. When Alien was first written, Ripley wasn't the star, she was just another crew member. The script was famously written with every role as gender neutral, meaning anyone could be male or female, depending on casting. Sigourney Weaver was a complete unknown when she auditioned, and at nearly 6 feet tall, she towered over her competition. But Ridley Scott saw something, her quiet intensity, the way she carried herself like someone both fragile and unbreakable. Studio executives were hesitant. They wanted a male lead, someone more traditional for a sci-fi thriller, but Weaver fought for it, bringing Ripley's toughness to life in auditions. When the cameras rolled, she didn't just play the character, she defined her. Ripley's transformation from background officer to sole survivor wasn't just the arc of the film. It was Weaver's rise from unknown actress to cinematic icon, forever rewriting who could lead a sci-fi horror story. Number 4. When you see the facehugger's anatomy, its fleshy underside, its slimy movements, it feels uncomfortably real. That's because it was. The effects team built the creature with animal organs, sheep kidneys, oysters, and bits of shellfish stuffed inside latex skin. The tubes were filled with fresh seafood slime to give it that glistening wetness. Ridley Scott believed the audience would instinctively recognize real biology, even if they couldn't name it. When the camera lingered on the creature, those tendons and membranes weren't just rubber, they were pieces of life, pulsing under hot studio lights. To sell the movement, the team used air hoses to make it twitch, while puppeteers manipulated the tail with fishing wire. The result was unsettling, not because it was a special effect, but because it looked like something that had truly crawled out of an autopsy tray. The facehugger wasn't science fiction, it was body horror disguised as biology. Number 5. It's one of the most famous moments in horror cinema. The chestburster ripping through Kane's ribcage, spewing blood and terror across the dinner table. But what most people don't know is that the cast had no idea what was about to happen. Ridley Scott deliberately kept the details secret, telling the actors they were filming a birth scene, but never explaining the mechanics. The rig was hidden under John Hurt's shirt, tubing primed with high-pressure pumps of fake blood. When the moment came, the explosion was violent, sudden, and so realistic that Veronica Cartwright's scream of horror was not acting at all. She was drenched in a jet of blood that knocked her back against the wall, eyes wide with genuine shock. The entire set fell into chaos. Actors gagged, swore, and recoiled. while Scott kept cameras rolling. What ended up on screen wasn't staged terror. It was raw, instinctive human panic, preserved forever on film. Number 6. When Swiss artist H.R. Giger first showed his designs for the alien, they were so grotesque and sexual that studio executives nearly pulled the plug. His biomechanical nightmares weren't just monsters. They were sculptures of living machines fused with bones, tubes, and flesh. The alien's head was elongated like a distorted skull, its jaw glistening with metallic tendons, its body sleek and phallic. To Giger, it was art. To others, it was too unsettling, too perverse. At one point, the studio tried to remove him from the project, calling his work sickening, but Ridley Scott fought to keep him, insisting that no one else could capture the nightmare he envisioned.
Dallas?
Giger was brought to London, where he hand-built the alien head and suit with obsessive detail. Every curve, every glistening surface was molded by his hands. The monster wasn't just designed, it was birthed by an artist whose nightmares had finally found a stage. Number 7. Believe it or not, Ridley Scott once pitched an even darker ending to Alien. In his version, the alien would kill Ripley inside the shuttle, then sit at the controls, mimicking her voice in the final log entry. The studio was horrified. Killing the last survivor and letting the alien speak was too bleak, even for 1979. Executives forced Scott to abandon the idea, insisting audiences needed a survivor. But the idea reveals just how far he was willing to push. To him, the alien wasn't just a monster. It was an intelligence, a perfect organism that could adapt and even replace humanity. While the ending we got made Ripley an icon, the scrapped version would have been nihilistic, closing the film with the suggestion that the alien had won completely. One ending gave us a hero. The other would have left audiences stumbling out of theaters in stunned silence. Number 8. When you look closely at the alien's biomechanical head, you'll notice something disturbing. It looks familiar, almost human. That's because inside the transparent dome of the original design, the effects team built in fragments of a real human skull. The bone structure gave the alien its uncanny balance between creature and corpse, something recognizably human, yet monstrously distorted. H.R. Giger loved blending the organic with the mechanical, and he believed adding a literal skull would trigger subconscious terror. Audiences might not register it consciously, but their minds would. It was a face without a face, a death mask staring back at its prey. Later sequels dropped the transparent dome, but in Alien, the skull inside turned the creature into more than a monster. It became a walking death figure, a grim reaper stalking the crew of the Nostromo. Death wasn't hidden in this film. It was staring straight through the monster's skin. Number 9, when the alien opens its jaws and lets out that bone-chilling hiss, you're not hearing a machine. You're hearing animals. The sound design team layered together pig squeals, hissing snakes, and distorted dolphin cries to create something both organic and alien. The pig provided the guttural shriek, snakes gave it menace, and the dolphin sounds, pitched and warped, added an eerie, almost childlike quality. By blending real animal noises, the alien's voice felt instinctively threatening. The human brain recognizes those sounds as danger signals from the natural world. It wasn't just a monster howling, it was evolution itself screaming back at us. Predator perfected from nature's darkest library. Number 10. Originally, Alien ended when Ripley escaped in the shuttle, drifting off into space, but Ridley Scott felt it was too abrupt, too neat. He wanted one last jolt, one last nightmare, so he added the final act, the alien hiding in the escape pod, blending into the machinery like a living shadow. It wasn't in the script, it was improvised late in production, forcing the crew to rebuild the shuttle interior with hidden alcoves where the alien could unfold itself. Sigourney Weaver didn't even know the full blocking until the day of shooting, which heightened her raw fear. The sequence gave audiences one more heart attack, stretching the tension until the very last frame. It turned Alien from a monster movie into a masterclass of suspense, proving that terror doesn't end when you think you're safe. In space, the nightmare doesn't stop, it waits until you exhale. Number 11. The alien's acid blood wasn't just a clever plot twist. It was rooted in a real science demonstration. Special effects supervisor Brian Johnson remembered a chemical experiment where corrosive liquids ate straight through metal, and he brought the idea into the script. The challenge was how to film it convincingly. The solution was low-tech but ingenious. They used actual sulfuric acid on styrofoam and shot it in close-up, watching as the foam melted away like flesh dissolving under heat. To create the multi-level dripping effect, miniature sections of the ship were stacked in layers, with acid burning through each one. The sequence gave the alien an unstoppable quality, No cage could hold it, no weapon could harm it. By turning the monster's blood into a weapon, the filmmakers flipped a weakness into ultimate defense. It wasn't enough to kill you. Even dying, the alien would take you with it. Number 12. Yaphet Kotto, who played Parker, was known for his intensity, but on the set of Alien, he carried that intensity off screen. To stay in character, he picked fights with his fellow cast members, grumbling, snapping, and keeping himself on edge. He wanted his frustration and fear to feel raw when the cameras rolled, but sometimes it went too far. Sigourney Weaver later admitted she avoided him between takes because he was so unpredictable. Ridley Scott encouraged the behavior, believing the tension would bleed into the group dynamic. It worked. When Parker explodes with anger on screen, it feels less like acting and more like bottled up hostility finally breaking loose.
What the hell are you doing, man?
It's a cat.
Kotto gave the film one of its most human performances. Furious, terrified, defiant. His method acting may have made him unpopular on set, but it helped turn Parker into a character audiences would never forget, a man raging against an unstoppable nightmare. Number 13. The Chamber of Eggs, bathed in eerie blue light, looks like it belongs to another world. In reality, it was filmed in a dank basement beneath Shepperton Studios. The space was cold, wet, and claustrophobic, perfect for Ridley Scott's vision. To give the eggs their translucent glow, the effects team used a real cow's stomach lining, stretched thin over the latex shells. The writhing movement inside, that was Scott's own hands in rubber gloves, wiggling to give the impression of something alive. The eerie lighting came from lasers borrowed from the Who's stage show, which happened to be rehearsing nearby. They blasted beams of light through the mist, creating an otherworldly shimmer. When you look at that iconic shot, the camera gliding low over breathing eggs, you're not just looking at special effects. You're looking at a rock band's lasers, a director's hands, and the repurposed guts of a cow stitched together into nightmare fuel. Number 14. Bolaji Badejo was a 6 feet 10 inches Nigerian art student when he was plucked out of obscurity to play the alien. His height and lanky frame were perfect for the role, but wearing the suit was torture. The costume was made of latex and fiberglass, trapping heat and suffocating air. Once he was zipped inside, he could barely see or breathe. Crew members had to keep a constant eye on him, rushing in with oxygen between takes to prevent him from collapsing. The inside of the suit grew slick with his sweat, pooling in his boots. Badejo could only move in slow, deliberate motions because the weight of the costume threatened to pull him down. Yet, that very limitation gave the creature its terrifying grace, a nightmare that stalked in silence. Badejo disappeared from Hollywood after Alien, never acting again. But for one film, he embodied a monster that scarred generations. Number 15. Alien's look was defined by shadows, haze, and mystery. But the haze wasn't digital. It was real smoke, pumped into the set until the air was thick with fog. Ridley Scott wanted the Nostromo to feel like a nightmare industrial dungeon, where every corner was murky and suffocating. But the cast was breathing that atmosphere for hours on end. Between the intense heat of the lights and the unrelenting smoke, actors fainted, coughed, and begged for relief. Yaphet Kotto later admitted he felt lightheaded nearly every day of shooting. Veronica Cartwright's asthma made things even worse. Every take was a gamble with her lungs. Scott refused to compromise. He believed the oppressive atmosphere was worth it. And when you watch the film, you can almost feel the air clogging your own chest, because it wasn't just the characters struggling to breathe. It was the actors themselves suffocating in the name of cinema. Number 16. You'd think the alien was the hardest creature to control on set, but no, it was the cat. Jonesy, or Jones, the orange tabby, had entire sequences written around him. But cats don't take direction. They don't care about lighting cues or camera angles. In the scene where Jonesy hisses at the alien from inside his carrier, the production team struggled to get the reaction they wanted. How do you make a cat look genuinely terrified without traumatizing it? Their solution was both simple and cruelly ingenious. They brought a German shepherd onto set hidden behind a partition. The dog was revealed at just the right moment, and Jones erupted with the perfect hiss, fur bristling, ears flat. Then the dog was whisked away, and the cat was rewarded. The alien may have terrified audiences, but behind the scenes, it was man's best friend who coaxed the most primal fear out of the ship's tiniest crew member. Number 17. The Nostromo wasn't just a set, it was a labyrinth. Ridley Scott wanted the cast to feel trapped, so he had the art department build the corridors as one continuous maze. Once you stepped inside, you couldn't see the studio. You were lost in a world of dim lights, dripping pipes, and industrial steel. The walls sweated condensation, shadows stretched unnaturally, and the sound design echoed every footstep like the ship itself was alive. Actors often got disoriented moving through it, bumping into walls or taking wrong turns that led them back where they started. Even the air was thick. Smoke machines filled the corridors with haze, choking the actors as the lights burned hot above them. Scott loved it because the discomfort showed on camera. The claustrophobia wasn't acting. It was lived-in dread. The ship was never just a backdrop. It was the film's silent, suffocating predator, waiting to close in. Number 18. In an early version of the film, Ripley discovers Dallas and Brett cocooned by the alien, slowly being transformed into eggs. It was a horrifying revelation that the alien didn't just kill its prey, it recycled them. The scene was filmed in gruesome detail, with Dallas begging Ripley to kill him. Sigourney Weaver delivers a mercy killing that pushes her character to the edge of despair. But in test screenings, the sequence slowed down the film's relentless pacing, so it was cut. For decades, it was considered lost, surviving only in fragments. It wasn't until the director's cut in 2003 that audiences saw the full sequence restored. The cocoon scene adds a layer of biological nightmare, showing the alien not as a hunter, but as an entire reproductive system. In the end, Alien wasn't about survival alone. It was about assimilation, the terrifying erasure of the human body into something alien. Number 19. After seeing early cuts, Fox executives complained that the film was too slow and demanded more blood, more kills, more action. They wanted the alien to leap out every 10 minutes, turning the film into a monster of the week spectacle. Ridley Scott pushed back. He believed suspense mattered more than slaughter, that the anticipation of horror was scarier than showing it outright. He fought to keep the alien in the shadows, to let silence and dread do the heavy lifting. The studio relented, though reluctantly. In the end, Scott's restraint became the film's greatest strength. Alien wasn't a splatterfest. It was a slow, smothering nightmare that built to unbearable tension. Ironically, the very thing executives feared, that it was too quiet, is what made it timeless. Because sometimes the scariest sound in the universe isn't a scream, it's silence. Number 20. Not long after Alien's release, Dan O'Bannon and Ridley Scott faced accusations that the story had borrowed heavily from older sci-fi works. The loudest complaint came from the creators of It, The Terror from Beyond Space, 1958, a B-movie about a space crew stalked by a monster on their ship. The similarities were undeniable, but Fox argued Alien elevated the idea into something new, something operatic. H.R. Giger's visuals, Scott's atmosphere, and O'Bannon's script transformed a pulpy premise into high art. Lawsuits fizzled, but Alien's success reignited debates about originality in Hollywood. Was it theft, or was it reinvention? In the end, Alien proved that even if ideas repeat, execution is everything. What might have been another forgotten monster flick became a masterpiece because it was told with vision, terror, and precision. Alien wasn't supposed to be this big, but in its silence, in its strange details, it became legend. One film that redefined horror and science fiction in a single breath, birthing a monster that still stalks our nightmares. Decades later, the chestburster still shocks, Ripley still inspires, and the alien still feels untouchable. It was never just a creature, it was fear, perfected. If you made it this far, drop a comment and tell us what nightmare to explore next. And don't forget to like and subscribe, because in space, no one can hear you scream, but on YouTube, we can.